All right, here we go. Salute to NBA Nation on this Friday afternoon / evening. Another edition of NBA Weekly where we recap the latest NBA news, rumors, and games as well, man. CP the franchise in the building. Joining me today, you can catch him on multiple shows, including The Front Office with Trevor Lane. You can catch him on SpotTrack.com, writing about and chronicling the latest NBA front office news and salary cap updates. Our guy Keith Smith is back in the building. On today's show, we are going to talk about the red-hot Luka Doncic and the MVP race. Luka is cooking after a 60-point outing against the Miami Heat. NBA expansion is heating up. Could Las Vegas and Seattle be in the mix, and what that means for the league going forward? Cade Cunningham's injury, how does that impact the Eastern Conference? And also, Wemby hits the playoffs, man. Wemby makes the playoffs for the first time, and let's see how that impacts the Western Conference landscape. So hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. We also got March Madness going on, Keith. Basketball galore, man. Basketball galore, man.
That time of year, man, we got hoops all day long. It's great. You know, nothing beats when you turn on the TV at noon on a weekday, and it's like we got basketball, especially now that I don't have a real job anymore. It's even better.
This opening weekend for hoops, it's always my favorite, especially when the tournament is concerned. So. Just been enjoying that, and I'm going to tap in after this. But on the league front, let's open this up, man. Luka Doncic, 60 points against the Miami Heat, 100 points over the last 2 games. He's risen up to number 2 on NBA.com's MVP ladder. He's got the Lakers in 3rd place right now in the West. What do you think, man? Is Luka the favorite right now?
I think it's still SGA. Like, the overall body of work, he is, done so well, and the team has such a great record. I'm going to keep it with him, but yeah, Luka's right up there now. You want to put Luka, Wemby, Jokic still. I'm going to shout out my guy, Jaylen Brown from the Celtics, Cade Cunningham, if he's eligible, and that's going to be the tricky part here. We got some guys that we're watching for potential eligibility that can't miss many more games, like Wemby's in that spot, and Cunningham. So we'll see if those guys are even eligible to be on the ballot. But yeah, Luka's certainly made a case as the Lakers have pushed up in the standings, now firmly 3rd in the West. They're still in a battle, but they're playing really well.
Yeah, I mean, to see them go, a couple weeks ago, they were in 6th. And, there always is, like, parity, especially in that second tier of the West, where, like, in a couple of games, things can really shift. And it still can, as you said. But you have to give him a lot of credit. Like, with Shea, even when he was gone for that month, OKC was still a great team. Right, they were able to win games without him and maintain a great record. They have a lot of depth going across the board with Jared McCain and Jalen Williams playing, without J-Dub playing. So OKC's just in a class of its own. But for Luka being able to almost carry this Laker team, man, dealing with LeBron's injuries and some lackluster players and DeAndre Ayton's of the world, to me, I know, to me, you can always, I know, like, they want to dip into the advanced metrics when they talk MVP race, especially when it's Jokic and SGA. To me, you can always pick, there's like 3 guys who you can, you're splitting hairs when you talk about who it can go to. I think Luka should get this one this year, man, just because of the body of work.
Yeah, this is starting to turn into, like, I'm kind of putting Luka now in where I had Jokic for such a long time, where it's like, pick whoever you think is more worthy, and I'm not going to fight you too much on it. I'm starting to get there a little bit. I still have Wemby up there, and I feel like I said SGA. But yeah, if somebody wants to pick Luka, I'm not going to fight him too much on it. He's been fantastic. And, and you said it, LeBron's missed time. Austin Reeves missed a large chunk of time too. And that the Lakers team, as you look at it, it's not like a loaded roster. Like, a lot of those guys on that roster, I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want them on my team. And here they are, third place in the West and playing really well. Yeah, and Luka, I mean, his individual stats are certainly going to be there. So, yeah, no issue with that. I will say it's interesting when this is a good, like, best versus valuable, right? Valuable, it's Luka, because you take him off that Lakers team, they're probably not very good. Cade Cunningham, we're about to find out how good are the Pistons without him. Now, they beat the Wizards without him, but let's face it. I mean, Wizards might be struggling here in the March Madness bracket
Right.
the way they've been playing.
Right.
And then you get Jaylen Brown, take him off the Celtics most of the year. How good are they going to be? So, but best is that's where the voters will have to decide where that is with this. And then, like I said, who knows? Maybe something creeps in there with the game eligibility, and that gets a little messy. So it'll be very interesting to watch that all play out here over the last few weeks of the season.
What do you think? Just how he has his Laker team playing? Do you give them a shot here in the West? Is it still a two-team race between the Thunder and San Antonio? The Nuggets, I don't think they'll be strong enough defensively to really have a say here, even though they did take it to the Thunder last year. Last year. I just think this Nuggets team defensively is just not strong enough to really be considered. But, the Spurs are there. Obviously, you have the champion Thunder. You give the Lakers any shot here in the West?
Yeah, it's funny where you mentioned the Nuggets. No better source for covering the Nuggets than Adam Morris. And he said the other night when they lost to the Grizzlies, the Nuggets were pretty whole and lost to the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies kind of controlled the game throughout. He was like, yeah, terrible loss. This team doesn't have it. And if Adam is making that, I'm not really going to argue with Adam. He knows that Nuggets team better than I do, certainly better than most. But I agree. I just don't know that Nuggets team has it. And I've been for months now saying it's OKC, tier of their own up here, right? And then you get Denver kind of just behind them. Then it's like a group of 5 teams or so because they're so tightly compact. And I had the Spurs in that group of 5. Now I've kind of retooled those tiers a little. It's still OKC by themselves, but then it's Spurs and Lakers for me in that next tier. I think the Lakers have played their way in there. I still don't love their defense. They're playing pretty good defense. JJ Redick's done some good stuff during this win streak. They're mixing in a lot of zone defense, a lot of junk defenses. And I know you know the term, but when I say that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just what you call it when it's like some kind of weird, gimmicky kind of defense that you maybe can run a handful of possessions each game. So they've done a nice job. LeBron is now LeBron the connector. Right, he's just doing his thing out there and not demanding the ball all the time and all that. Austin Reeves has been really good, and of course Luka. So yeah, I mean maybe they can make a little bit of a run. We'll see. The Spurs, we're gonna do what we do with every new team in the playoffs, right? Prove it to me. I'll believe you can win in the postseason when you win in the postseason. Until then, we're gonna have to see.
Yeah, and speaking of the Spurs, 52-18, and Wemby's got the game winner last night. It looked like, I mean, it's crazy looking at a guy at 7'4", with the jab step like a Kevin Durant. And, just took his time and just slowly elevated and got that in. But, that 52-18 for the Spurs, their gradual progression, their gradual development to get here as a bona fide to, like, the Lakers aren't most likely not going to catch them, but a bona fide 2 seed in the West this year. That's why Wemby is in the MVP race. He's been a big factor in it, but, give credit, man. The Spurs team is really coming along nicely, man.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I love what Mitch Johnson did where he switched to, we're going to play 4 smalls around Wemby and we're going to really hug up on the perimeter and we'll take some chances in the passing lanes. We'll go for some steals because you have the single best eraser in the game hanging out back around the rim. And then when they go 4 out or 4 around 1 or even play a lot of 5 out, it makes them really hard to defend. Everybody thinks about it with, all that spacing for Wemby to go to work. But it's also Fox and Castle can break guys down off the dribble, get to the bucket. Dylan Harper's doing a nice job with that. I think he's come along nicely. And then you get Cornette and Barnes and Keldon Johnson, who's been awesome coming off the bench. I mean, they've got good depth. It's just going to be when you get into the playoffs, that team, really, it's Harrison Barnes and a little bit of De'Aaron Fox, a little bit of Luke Cornette. That's it for playoff experience on that team. And we all know playoffs are a different animal because you're playing the same team 4 to 7 times over a 2-week period.
Yeah.
They're going to know you really well by the time you get to like game 4. You're not really going to have a whole lot of surprises left to throw at them, and it's going to come down to execution, and we'll see how they get through it. But yeah, give me Wemby and a bunch of guys who can do some stuff, and I'm happy to take those chances in the playoffs. He's that good.
They've been fantastic. Stephon Castle has vastly become one of my favorite players in the league. I'm a big fan of those taller guards. I was a Penny Hardaway guy, and just his game, relentless downhill pressure, physical defender, the assist, the playmaking. I mean, there was a little bit of question marks with him coming in from the draft, but man, you can see this guy's on a rocket to superstardom, man. He's on a rocket.
Yeah, he's great. The big question is going to be, will he be able to shoot it consistently? Now, he's done better as the year has gone along. He's improved just about every month as a shooter. And what I like is he stayed a willing shooter. I always say it's easier to guard a non-shooter than it is a bad shooter. Because a bad shooter might get hot. A non-shooter they're not going to shoot it, and you completely disregard them whenever they go out behind the arc. But he's so tough. He's a great defensive player. You put him on the perimeter, on the other team's best ball handler, and then you got Wemby behind. They do a lot of havoc to opposing offenses. He's really, really good. Now, I think he's going to improve that jump shot. That's going to eventually stabilize to, I don't think he's ever going to win 3-point contests.
Right.
But, just be a good enough shooter to get by. And if he does that with all of his other skills, that's a really good player. Nasty
athleticism. Yeah. And so I think the question, as you said, for me, is going to be with them, will the shooting help them in the playoffs? Champagne can shoot, and, every once in a while Wemby can knock it down from outside, but do they have enough shooting there to topple OKC? Because the way OKC's looking with Jared McCain, I mean, he's like 20-point scorer off the bench now. Like, what
crazy.
The hell? And you got AJ Mitchell, who's almost, his twin. Offensively, AJ Mitchell's chipping in. He had like 15 points in like 10 minutes the other night. I mean, the embarrassment of riches of these guys. You didn't even think, I don't even know if Jalen Williams, J-Dub even had a season this year, practically.
Right?
Just the way that they've been running. It's unbelievable with them, man.
Yeah, the Thunder needed another good guard. Like, I need another cookie. I mean, what are we doing here? Jared McCain, and they, I don't want to say they gave up nothing, but in terms of their war chest of draft picks, they didn't give up anything they're ever going to miss.
No.
I mean, they are, really just set now moving forward. They've got that. And this is the point. I made this point today on Front Office Show with our guy Trevor Lane when we were doing our daily Friday show or weekly Friday show, is the way you're going to build a sustainable winner now in the NBA. You hit on your couple stars, 2-3 stars. They're going to get paid, probably near max or max deals. Then it's going to be continually replacing players with draft picks that fall in the 20s. And if you can nail those picks in the 20s, or like the Thunder, use some picks to get a guy who's still on a rookie scale contract,
Smart.
And you could get production out of them. That's how you're going to do it. You're not going to be able to go out there and, all right, I traded for my 3 max guys, and then I get this guy and this guy. That's probably not going to be a real sustainable thing, because in the NBA today, you need 100 games of depth to get through the regular season and playoffs. And we know that's just a lot. You're asking a lot. You've got to be ready to go from, late October into late June, if that's your ultimate end goal there. And that 8 months is going to take a lot out of your team. You're going to beat a lot of guys up, but if you have depth that you can call upon, that's going to be huge. And that's going to be what separates, the teams that become sustainable winners. You might be able to pick a, all right, we nailed free agency, we nailed a couple trades and get in there for a year or two. But if you want to be in there for a 4, 5, 6, 7 year window, you got to be in there by nailing those late first round draft picks.
Yeah, which is why when they sunk all the money in all 3 of those guys, I was like, it's a great move. They already won. They're all in their prime, or in the case of Chet and J-Dub, haven't even hit their prime yet. And so, that it was a great move by Presti. Then you go get a Jared McCain who's still on his rookie scale deal, just 2 years into the league. And so he's on the rise. They don't even need to, Hartenstein hasn't even played the season. They can afford to. I love him. He's a great player, all-around player. That's my guy from the Knicks. But the way Jalen Williams isn't playing, they drafted the kid from Georgetown. He didn't even play yet.
Yeah.
I forgot his last name.
Thomas Sorber.
Yeah. They drafted him. He didn't even play yet. And now you're talking about, you may get between Utah, the Clippers picks. They're just sitting pretty right now. So it's going to be interesting to see if and when these 2 teams collide out west in the playoffs. Any concerns with Ant-Man, the knee? And the Timberwolves, any concerns there?
Yeah, not that they're going to make the playoffs. They're fine with
Yeah.
that. They're going to be in the top six. It's just going to be where they fall. I mean, behind the Spurs, good luck. It is just so tightly congested. And it's really, we're at the point where if you have a bad, go on a 3-game losing streak, you might move 3, 4 spots in the
Yeah.
standings,
Yeah.
in the West. And it's
Yeah.
really the same way in the East,
Yeah.
too, in middle and down into the play-in tournament in the East. It's you're in a tricky spot. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. I will be more worried if we get to the end of this 2 weeks and it's another week or so. Now we're almost to the end of the season. There's only about 3.5 weeks to go in the regular season. So you start anytime you hear a 2-week injury, and that's when it's one of the things we like to say on Front Office Show, reevaluate it in. That doesn't mean return, right?
Yeah.
It's rarely is it, yep, we reevaluate him. He's going to play tonight.
Good. Right.
Sometimes it is, but that's often more, a couple days, sometimes a week, something like that. So hopefully he gets back and he's ready to do his thing, because that Timberwolves team is, they've shown the ability once they get into the playoffs, they're pretty good and they're ready to go. So I think they'll be all right. And they've got good depth. Good thing they went out and got Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah,
at the trade deadline, because he's gonna be huge for them. Especially he's gonna be huge for them anyway, but especially with Anthony Edwards out, they're gonna be able to kind of plug him in. That's what they've done over these first couple games next to Dante DiVincenzo, and they're doing their thing, and they're playing a little bit faster with Dosunmu too. He gets them out running, which I think suits a guy like Julius Randle. You could get Julius Randle in transition. Not a lot of guys are stepping in front of Julius Randle. He's going to get his way to where he needs to be down near the basket.
Yeah, I'm with you. Once again, we're talking to Keith Smith from the Front Office Show and Spot Track. Salute to everybody in the chat once again. Mr. TD says Wolves are one and done. He says Ayo and Kobe White both good. Shout out to Smooth Guitar. He says Timberwolves always have nagging issues. Yeah, it's been interesting to see the dialogue around the Timberwolves this year. It's almost been similar to the Knicks this year, where the high highs, the low lows. Julius Randle being the center point of that conversation usually, because some nights he looks like an all-star, the other nights he has you pulling your hair out. So gonna be interesting to see how this team fares in the West. It's gonna be a dogfight out there, and if they don't make it, what does A-Rod and those guys do with this team? Going to be fascinating to see. Out east, let's go out east. Cade Cunningham, collapsed lung, man. He's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. According to Shams, it was a minor collapsed lung. What do you think about the injury and the impact on the East?
That reminds me of when they used to say it's only minor surgery when it happens to someone else, right? Like, it's like, is there such thing as a minor collapsed lung? I don't know. It doesn't sound good anyway. But yeah, it was one of those things. It was just a weird play. He went down and Trey Johnson fell on him, and he looked up and people I know who've had collapsed lungs in the past said, yeah, it does feel like a back spasm, because you feel like you can't get a tight breath, and it just feels like everything locks up on you, and that's where it goes. So that's, I think, why they said, all right, it's back spasms. We'll see in a day or two, and then it comes out. So the time frames are all over the place. CJ McCollum was out basically a month. Terrence Jones, if people remember him,
7 games.
He was out only 2 weeks and then was back with that. One of the challenges, the Pistons have a lot of road games. You can't really fly with a collapsed lung, so that could be a challenge here. If they're fine, I think. They've got a 4-game lead on the Celtics in the conference. That should be enough with only 12, 13 games to play. They should be okay there, because you've still got Dennis Jenkins, you've got Karis LeVert, they've got Marcus Sasser. Those guys can pick up. But if this was to bleed into the playoffs, even if they are the 1 seed, it's just not good to be in that spot, because now you're talking Cade Cunningham. Even if he can't get back, or he's coming back once the playoffs have started, he'll have been out for a month. And that's tricky. That's where you're looking like, all right, is he going to be ready? Is he going to be built up? How's that going to go? So hopefully they get him back with a week or so to play in the regular season. He can kind of catch his rhythm again, build himself back up, and go into the playoffs. But that's a tough loss for the Pistons for sure.
Yeah. And then the sidebar to that is the eligibility concerns, the 65 games.
Yeah.
He's not the only one. There are a number of players who are in jeopardy due to the injury, and it brings about the question of, do we do away with this rule? Does it need to be tweaked? And I think the league is going to look into this just based on these circumstances, which, all rules are kind of get modified based on how, circumstances change and circumstances are brought up, because, the rule was to kind of prevent the Embiids of the world from being, just sitting in street clothes and just chilling on the bench from load management standpoint. But now you have guys who are legitimately injured, have done their best to put their best foot forward and win games and compete at a high level. And you have a lot of financial incentives for them to hit these marks. So I think the league will do something at the end of the season to address it, because a lot of guys are in jeopardy here.
Yeah, a couple things on this. One is a lot of people, because we've talked this, it's been a topic now for a couple of weeks. And anytime you talk, one thing some people will fire back with, yeah, but it's a CBA thing. They need to wait till the next CBA. But they don't. They can do a negotiation of certain parts of the CBA. It just, without boring everybody to tears and contract terms, it's called the side letter agreement, where you make an addendum to the CBA. And the NBA and NBPA have gotten really good. The NBPA is the union, have gotten really good at that over the years, especially. Unfortunately, they had to work through a lot of side letter agreements and adjustments through COVID, but they got through it, and that built up the ability to do that. So they could definitely side letter this and say, hey, 65 wasn't the right number. Maybe it should be 60. Maybe it should be 55 or 50. Whatever they decide. I personally think the voters always did a pretty good job of factoring it in anyway. Let's go. The other thing that I think doesn't get talked about quite as much, because you're absolutely right, some of these players could be impacted. Now, thankfully for Cade Cunningham, because he made All-NBA a year ago and his extension's already started, he's locked in on his 30% max. He's good. But if he's out, and let's say he's out, and Anthony Edwards is out, and let's say another guy falls out, you're going to get some guys who they would have been like All-NBA fifth team if it went that far. They're going to get in there. Now those guys are going to be like, hey, I qualified. I want the bigger contract. And if you're their teams, you can't just be, we just talked about it. You can't just be handing out, oh, okay, you get a max, you get a max, you get a max, and you get the 30% or 35% max because you qualified. You got to be really, really careful with that. And of course, those players are going to ask, because it's not their place or their agent's place to kind of play the game of like, well, yeah, it was a weird thing. Why they didn't get, no, for them, hey, they were all NBA. They qualified. Give us our money. Pay us. And that's going to lead to some really interesting things. One could happen immediately if Cade Cunningham's out. That could be Jalen Duren. This summer could, if the voters are like, we got to have a Piston on there because they were so good, and Duren's eligible and he's been really good. And a lot of people, even though it's positionless, they still like to give me a center on each one of the teams. Duren gets in there now. All of a sudden, Duren and his agent can be like, hey, I'm all NBA. Pay me. Let's go. And that could lead to a really interesting decision point for the Pistons on how far they're willing to go.
So now, are those? So I'm aware that it impacts the contract in terms of longer term. But is All NBA? Is there like a bonus incentive for making All NBA?
Yeah, there are a couple guys who still have those floating around in their contracts. Most of them that have things like that they're already at that level. So you're not going to necessarily see anything new trigger, but it's more of the guys who they become eligible for the jump from the 25 to 30 or the 30 to 35%. If we get some weird kind of voting results, all of a sudden you may have a guy who's eligible, and that's whether it's new contract or extension eligible. That's like, whoa, wait a minute, this guy was not eligible before, but now he is, and that could be a little bit of a different look here. So we'll see. But yeah, the bonuses. What's interesting is we're like 2 years in now that teams are like, we're done with bonuses. You guys know with the Knicks loved it for years. It was like bonuses in the contract, bonuses in the contract. And part of the reason why is, let's say you have a player who makes $20 million, but he has $5 million of bonuses. His trade value, especially when it comes to any teams dealing with apron issues, is $25 million, because you have to reflect for the potential full amount, because you can't, he may only be $20 million on the books, because like a funny one. Jordan Poole has a Defensive Player of the Year bonus written into his contract. I have as good of a chance of winning Defensive Player of the Year as Jordan Poole does. So what happens in that situation is, I think it's 1.2 million. If even though he's not there, if the Pelicans were to trade him to a team, right, your Knicks have been tight to the apron. If they try to trade him to the Knicks, that 1.2 million counts in there, because if the planets align and it's 27 other players, probably more like 77 other players aren't eligible, and Jordan Poole wins Defensive Player of the Year, you have to account for it. So how teams have worked around it, they're just not doing the bonuses anymore. It's just, hey, I'm just going to pay your guy, let's go. Or I'm not going to give you that little extra, so when Shams tweets it out, it looks like you got your guy 20 million more. I'm sorry, we just can't do it, even though these are all baloney bonuses that you'll never hit anyway.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't know any of that about Jordan Poole. That's insane, but that's hilarious. shout out to Mr. TD and Smooth Guitars. And Keith has all the gems. He's a walking CBA, ladies and gentlemen. He knows his stuff tooth and nail. Now, speaking of that, as it relates to, first off, on the expansion topic, L.A., Seattle, where are you?
Las Vegas.
Sorry. Yeah, Las Vegas, Seattle. Where are you on the debate in terms of good for the league, terrible in terms of the tanking teams, and watering down the league? Where are you on the expansion on that sense?
I'm like 4/5 of the way towards good. I think the league is ready to expand. I think as long as they can do real tangible changes to the tanking stuff, and whatever they put in doesn't have a ton of unintended consequences, and it kind of curbs some of the tanking, I think we'll be fine. I know people are like, man, there's like 7 or 8 teams tanking right now. Now we're going to add 2 more teams to do that. I get it. I do really get that. I understand if people are like, man, I just can't do it with any more of these tanking teams. There was a night the other night where it's like, none of these games are good, and that's been rare in the NBA, but that was the way it hit. It was all good teams playing tanking teams and a couple, I call them tank-off games. So I think we have enough talent in the league. This draft class coming in this year, super loaded. They'll obviously be part of the league by the time the league expands, if it happens when they're saying for the 28-29 season. So I think they're ready, and I think those teams deserve, or those cities deserve teams. Las Vegas, I'm a little Seattle 100%. Get them a team. Never should have lost the Sonics. Vegas, I'm a little less certain about. Just we'll see, but I mean, they've shown up for the Knights. They've shown up for the Aces. That they're there. Raiders seem to be doing fairly well out there. So yeah, I'm fine with that. Get one West team moved over to the East. Sounds like it's going to be Minnesota or Memphis. If it's Minnesota, there's a little bit more conference balance. With that. So yeah, I think this is going to be a good thing, and that's before I get into the selfishness of all of it, because it's going to be a content gold mine for months and months and years leading up to it. If this does go through,
for sure, and that's why I think that they really are going to tighten up on the tanking come this year, come this upcoming season, with expansion in mind, and really trying to guard against watering down the league with teams just mailing it in, because right now it's been an issue, and so that's why I think they're going to come down with some really strict rule, really change the tanking. Whether it's changing the lottery, we'll see what happens, but I think they're going to implement some really tight measures to try to guard against it, and we'll see what happens there. There was a question that I heard a couple of times now, and I'm not sure if you know this yet, but people were asking, what would that potentially do in terms of impacting the second apron? Will there be more salary added to the salary cap? Will there be more room as it relates to the second apron? Have they come out with that yet? What do you think?
Yeah, they haven't yet. So what happens when the teams come in, right? And they're talking about $7 to $10 billion per franchise that comes in. That money goes into a pot. It is completely split between the existing 30 ownership groups. The players get none of it. They don't get any of that expansion fee. And when we did get a couple people who were like, why is it so much? Like, the Lakers sold for $10 billion. because they're the Lakers. The Celtics sold for $6 billion. Why is it 7 to 10? Well, you got to remember what you're paying for. You're inviting me into the club, and not only you're inviting me into the club, but you're going to give me half of the club's profits and revenue that they make, or not half, but you're going to give me a share of it. So what you're telling all the owners is, hey, dilute your overall investment here from 1 of 30 to 1 of 32, but you're all going to get somewhere in the range of 500 to $700 million to do so, and that's why then the NBA, I believe, would not have kind of put this out there publicly, leak the information to be out there and be talked about if they didn't know they were either had the votes or were really close to having the votes to say. And it's very funny the way they're doing it, because they're like, this first vote is just, should we even explore the idea of Seattle and Las Vegas? Should we talk to people? Well, clearly, like, that's like, all right. And if things were to go sideways, then they could always say, yeah, we're good. Or if, let's say, the bids come in and teams are these bidders for these teams are like, yeah, I'm only going $5 billion. Maybe the league's like, all right, you know what? Then we're not going to do it. We'll wait. But I think that's where that goes. So now, when it gets to the salary cap, in theory, you could see the cap go up because you have two more markets. That's two more, groups of TV money. Now, TV money's a little weird right now because the league is going to take over the distribution of games, and some teams have started putting games on free over the air TV in their home markets and the like. So TV money's a little weird, but in theory, that's two more groups of revenue. And if you don't think Seattle Sonics and Las Vegas whatever's merchandise aren't going to fly off the shelves, of course it will, right? So that's going to be more money in. So yeah, you should get more money coming into the overall pot. I don't think it's going to be so much that it's like, oh my gosh, we were tied to the apron 2 years from now in 28, 29. Then now all of our problems are solved, because it's going to take a little while for all that stuff to build up.
Interesting stuff, man. If it wasn't Las Vegas, what's the other city that you would think of? Vancouver?
Yeah, I think Vancouver's ready. Again, they've made a lot of noise there. Louisville, Kentucky has been really hammering, like, we're ready for an NBA team. That I think they want to stay more on the West Coast, because just to balance the conference and balance the league a little bit more. I don't think it would be Mexico City. The G League team there has done well, but there's a host of issues with it being in Mexico City. Nothing against Mexico City, great city. I've been there a couple times, but it's getting players who are like, yeah, I'll go live there, and all the things with that. It's all the same stuff we went through for a long time with Toronto and originally Vancouver, that I think now people are, for the most part, past. But yeah, I think those would be the cities. I know Kansas City's always mentioned. St. Louis gets mentioned. No St. Louis, just because I don't need Jason Tatum deciding he wants to play at home. Let's keep them out for a while longer. Maybe Jason Tatum can own a team there someday. But yeah, I think it's Seattle and Las Vegas just makes sense.
Yeah.
And I will say this too, because this has been another topic. I don't want to see the Grizzlies get moved or the Pelicans get moved. Any Sonics fan will tell you how painful it's been to be without the Sonics. I don't want to see those teams pulled out. I know people are like, well, who cares? Nobody likes those teams anyway. There are fans, right? They have real fans, and I don't want to see those fans lose their teams.
Yeah, it's just the grindhouse, man. Memphis with the grindhouse years. Yeah. They were hitting it, man. They were in
exactly
there. FedEx FedEx Stadium or Arena. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what happens, man. Very interesting stuff around the league. What do you got on deck? Spot Track, front office show. What do you got on deck?
Yeah, so we're gearing up for the off season now, right? This is, I like to say, this is when I start living in two worlds, because I'm absorbing everything into the season and all the playoff stuff. Coming. That's the really great time of year for the basketball side of it. But there's a whole bunch of teams that are going to be out, so we'll be starting off season preview soon. I got some stuff coming up on the handful of veteran players who are still extension eligible, and whether or not they'll extend before the end of the season is up, or do they go into free agency, or where are those situations going to look like? And then when we do our off-season previews, we do all 30 teams. I go in depth on all of them, all the decisions they're facing, front office wise, coach wise, if there is one, and then what they might do in free agency to get everybody ready. And then on the heels of that, we'll have free agent write-ups. I just released at the beginning part of last week my spending power projections, so people know who has cap space, who has the non-taxpayer MLE, who has the little mid-level, the tax mid-level, who's potentially dealing with second apron and the like. So we got all that stuff out there, for the world to check out. A lot of that, and then front office show, it's gonna be same stuff, and we'll get into some draft stuff and the like on front office show as we get closer, because I've been spending a lot of time getting ready for this year's draft, because it is such a loaded draft class. It's going to be an awesome draft nights now. I used to say draft night, draft nights now.
2 nights, man. Well, listen, man, you're one of my go-to sources when it comes to this stuff, so we'll stick a tab in this one and catch back up once the playoffs kick off, man. Recap some action, man. But definitely appreciate the time and enjoy the weekend, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me. Enjoy the tournament.
Yes, sir. We'll do, man. All right, that was our guy, Keith Smith. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. Another great episode of the NBA Report. Who else we got in the chat here? Salute, man. Mr. TD, yeah, smooth. Appreciate you. Zach, definitely appreciate you. You guys know what I got to do. I got to take a quick break. And then I got to get to this Knicks versus Nets game, get to KFTV. Make sure that you remember that these shows are available in audio podcast format. So if you have to drop off, we understand. Life goes on. But you can catch us on all major podcast platforms. Make sure you guys are subscribing on the NBA Report. All right, great show. Fabian Aramaris, I see you in the chat. We'll see you guys later on the Knicks Fan TV side. Number one shows for the fans, by the fans. CP the franchise. I'm out. Have a great weekend, everybody. Coach Rubens, I see you in here. Salute.